Jessica knew that her husband Stephen was lying to her about why he was going on these daily walks into the forest. He could be gone for hours on end, while she was sitting at home in the middle of a pregnancy. She knew that if she wanted to figure out the truth, she would have to follow him. But poor Jessica gets the shock of her life when she sees where her husband actually goes every day. But why had Stephen been going on daily walks into the forest? What motivated Jessica to follow him, and what truth did she discover? But before we start our story, smash the like button, make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. As long as Jessica had been dating her now husband Stephen, he had told her that his dream was to move closer to the forest edge of the city. At that time, Stephen was living in a small apartment in the large city center, and Jessica was still living with her parents. She was fine with moving closer to the forest edge as she envisioned her and Stephen having children together, and it seemed much healthier to her to have her kids grow up in nature as opposed to inside the crowded city. But she knew that if they were to move now, or anytime soon, they would not be able to afford a place much bigger than this apartment, which was already small for the two of them, and children needed space outside and inside the house. She wanted to save money together and then move to a relatively sizable house on the forest edge. Stephen found this something extremely difficult to agree with, and he kept trying to come up with arguments to move out sooner. But the logic Jessica was using against him was flawless. Going against her wishes now would only make his desires more suspicious than they already were, and he simply could not have that. And so for 3 years, Stephen just waited it out, working as many hours as he could and saving as much money as possible. He and Jessica were very happy together, but Jessica could always feel that there was something odd in Stephen's behavior, like he could just not fully be himself. But that feeling was not enough to change anything in their relationship, and they even got married because it made it easier to get a good lease on the house they wanted. The house they were able to buy together after all those years of hard work was absolutely beautiful. Freestanding, no close neighbors, and the endless forest reachable right from their backyard. It was a dream, and Jessica could see how happy the move made Stephen. It was like he was finally complete, and in Jessica's mind, this was the moment that all her worries could be left behind. But she had no idea that this moment was actually the start of many, many more worries. From the first day they had moved into the home, Stephen started to make daily long walks in the forest. He would go immediately after work, and on the weekends he could be gone most of the afternoon sometimes. Something that Jessica did not mind, as she understood that he had probably looked forward to this for so long, and she wanted him to enjoy the place to the fullest. Plus, he was there with her when it mattered most. Because moving to this house also set something in motion for Jessica. Her desire to have children here with Stephen was enormous, and so she wanted to get pregnant as soon as possible. And for that, she needed Stephen. But she did not need him particularly long, as it only took 2 months before they got the first positive pregnancy test. It really felt like fortune was very much on the couple's side. At least, that is what Jessica naively thought. Months started progressing from that moment, and Jessica's pregnancy was very quickly becoming somewhat difficult for her. She was often feeling sick and weak from it, needing help to complete simple everyday tasks that she desperately needed Stephen's help for, seeing as he was the only person close by enough to help. And Stephen tried to heed his wife's wishes, but only to an extent. He had managed to convince his boss to let him work at home for the foreseeable future, only having to come into the office for 1 day a week. He also did not go to the gym anymore, instead getting some equipment for her in the house, and he started seeing his friends drastically less, and this time, it seemed like he was willing to make concessions on everything in his life in favor of his pregnant wife. Stephen did not stop his daily walks, refusing to shorten them for Jessica. While the time he spent with her was sufficient, she found his priorities strange. These walks seemed more important to him than anything else, and he couldn't provide an honest explanation. Stephen was a terrible liar, and Jessica could always tell when he wasn't being truthful. When he claimed his mental health would suffer without the walks, she knew he was lying, especially since he had never been a believer in mental health. Jessica didn't confront him, fearing it might lead to a big argument. He was there for her, and if he wanted to keep walking, she thought he should be allowed, but it bothered her that he couldn't be honest about why the walks were so important. What was he hiding in the woods? Determined to find out, Jessica decided to explore the forest herself. She had only walked near the edges before, never venturing deep where Stephen often went. He had always insisted on going alone, calling it his thing. On a day Stephen was at the office, Jessica, feeling well enough, packed supplies and followed the path he had carved. After nearly 2 hours of walking, Jessica found nothing unusual, just a path curving slightly to the right. As the path broadened and sunlight increased, she grew excited, only to be disappointed when she realized the path led her back home. It was a circular route, taking about 2.5 hours. Was this really all Stephen did? Had she been distrustful for no reason? Jessica returned home confused. She had been so sure Stephen was hiding something, but now she had no evidence. Had she missed something on the path? She wouldn't have another chance to walk it soon, as her pregnancy made it difficult. She tried to trust Stephen, but his behavior began to change. Stephen started talking to her less, avoiding her at home. He still helped with her pregnancy struggles, but their interactions became minimal. Jessica felt increasingly sad and unsure about their future. She knew she had to uncover the truth about Stephen's walks. Deciding to follow him, Jessica prepared by ordering binoculars and wearing clothes that would help her blend into the bushes. She conducted several test runs, staying far behind Stephen to avoid detection. From these, she began to draw some interesting conclusions. Jessica's main conclusion from her test runs was that Stephen never turned around during his walks. He seemed completely at ease, even whistling loudly, something she didn't know he could do. This gave her confidence that she could follow him without being noticed. The day finally arrived. Feeling strong, Jessica seized the opportunity when Stephen announced his afternoon walk. She hurried to follow him, but realized too late that she had forgotten her camouflage clothes. Still, since Stephen never looked back, she decided to proceed, relying on her binoculars to keep her distance. Nervous and excited, Jessica followed Stephen deeper into the forest. She was determined to uncover his secret, even though her pregnancy made the journey exhausting. Stephen's pace was fast, and Jessica struggled to keep up, but she refused to give up. She felt a mix of fear and anticipation, knowing this secret had been driving a wedge between them. After about an hour, Stephen strayed from the path, venturing into an untouched part of the forest. Jessica was amazed at how confidently he navigated, as if he knew the area by heart. She pushed through thick bushes and roots, growing more tired by the minute. Doubts crept in. Was this worth risking her health and the baby's? But her determination held firm. Nearly 2 hours into the hike, Stephen suddenly stopped. Jessica hid behind a bush, fearing he might turn around. To her surprise, he did glance in her direction, but she ducked just in time. When she peeked again, she saw him crouching, rummaging through his backpack. She wondered what he was looking for. A compass? A snack? But what he pulled out left her both surprised and confused. As Stephen put his backpack back on, Jessica noticed he had taken out 2 items, a plastic bag and a flashlight. The flashlight confused her. Why would he need it in broad daylight? Her frustration grew as she followed him deeper into the forest, feeling like she didn't even know her husband anymore. Soon, they arrived at an open space bathed in sunlight, with a small river flowing nearby. It was a beautiful spot, and Jessica could almost understand why Stephen came here. But her heart nearly stopped when she saw him walking toward a cave. Was he serious? Caves were dangerous. She wanted to scream at him to stop, but she couldn't risk revealing herself now. She had come too far to turn back. Terrified, Jessica watched as Stephen entered the cave, still holding the plastic bag and flashlight. She sat frozen, her heart pounding, hoping he would return soon. The forest felt eerie, and she worried about wild animals or dangers inside the cave. When she heard Stephen's voice echoing from within, her panic grew. What was he doing in there? She tried to call for help, but realized she had no signal. Then, to her shock, Stephen emerged from the cave, followed by 2 bears. They weren't fully grown, but they were large enough to be dangerous. Jessica trembled, fearing for Stephen's safety and her own. What had he gotten himself into? And what was in that plastic bag? The mystery only deepened, leaving her more confused and scared than ever. She was furious with Stephen for putting her in this situation, even though she had decided to secretly follow him. In her defense, if he hadn't been acting so strangely and keeping secrets, she wouldn't have considered it. Now they were stuck here, and her mind filled with questions as she fought back tears. However, as Jessica watched Stephen and the bears, she noticed something strange. The bears didn't seem angry or dangerous. They weren't growling or attacking him. In fact, Stephen didn't look scared at all. She realized she might have missed something important. After observing for a while, Jessica concluded something unbelievable. Stephen was playing with the bears. She saw his smile and heard his laugh, which softened her anger. The bears chased each other and splashed in the water with him, an adorable sight. When Stephen retrieved a plastic bag from the cave and fed the bears, her suspicions were confirmed. Jessica decided to confront him. While the bears were preoccupied with the food, she stepped out from her hiding spot. Stephen, caught off guard, froze. "What? How? What are you doing here?" he stammered. Jessica crossed her arms. "I could ask you the same." Realizing he couldn't lie anymore, Stephen confessed everything. He apologized repeatedly, admitting he had kept this secret out of fear. He explained that years ago, as a boy, he had found 2 sick bear cubs abandoned in the woods while hiking with his father. He and his father had cared for them and later released them into the wild. Stephen had always dreamed of reconnecting with them, and moving closer to the woods had been part of his plan. Jessica listened intently as he shared how finding the bears again was a way for him to honor his late father. Stephen begged for forgiveness, promising never to keep secrets again, though he confessed he couldn't stop visiting the bears. They spent hours with the bears before heading home. On the way, Stephen shared stories about his childhood and his bond with the animals. Jessica, though hurt by his secrecy, understood his motivations. She forgave him, and the couple began working on their relationship. Ev. Eventually, their little girl was born, and their love grew stronger than ever. Stephen continued visiting his bear friends, but now he didn't have to keep his special bond a secret.